ISB show, Sahil Rahi, continuing coverage of the Gold Cup. And all our viewers out there, we're going to talk about Canada. We're going to talk about Guatemala, going to talk about Mexico, going to talk about Panama, going to talk about Honduras. But we have to start off today with our home country because they haven't been impressing us recently. But Rahi, boy, did they put on a match today to advance through to the semifinals.
That was fun, right? That was fun. It's the first time as a U.S. fan you have had fun watching this team in a long time. It wasn't perfect. They gave up some very soft goals. They were very lucky to go through, but boy, was that fun. They showed fight. They showed desire. It was a roller coaster. That's what we've been waiting for.
It was you saw the intensity of the performance, right? And you had Matt Freese out dueling the legendary Keylor Navas in penalty kicks. So much to talk about. We're going to start with that match.
I had no belief going into penalties, considering on the other side was Keylor Navas. We very rarely see the U.S. team in penalties. That's a very rare thing. I was surprised. Man, some of those guys stepped up. Damian Downs, Freeman, what a penalty, man. Stepping up, ice water in his veins. I was shocked by some of these young kids, what they did. I was shocked how well they took some of those penalties.
Yeah. So let's talk about the match a little bit. First, got to give hats off to Costa Rica because Costa Rica was without some of their main players and they made the most of their chances. And this is the issue with the U.S. We'll talk about the bad later in terms of the defensive errors. But what was different about this U.S. performance? What stood out from that was so different from some of the previous performances we've seen? A lot of good stuff happened today.
I mean, they wanted to score, right? They felt like they were trying to attack. They were trying to go direct. They didn't do that thing where they recycled the ball, kept basically going from fullback to fullback and recycling. They were going forward. At times, they played it long, right? At times, they played over the top to Ajiman to see what he could do. For all his faults, he did create some problems, right? Yeah. Tillman was in and around everything, very influential. Luna, of course, with his fight and his desire. But the biggest thing for me is they tried to go forward in a direct and quick manner, and that makes a difference. And it's the first time we've seen that in a long time.
Yeah, that forward direct play, it made all the difference in the world. And like you said, you saw that fight in them. And I think that was the key. You saw the fight, you saw the desire. Berhalter getting mad at other players. Berhalter, you saw,
even Arston. I mean, you saw after Tillman missed the penalty, they were kind of, some of the Costa Rican players were giving him some problems, and the team kind of stood up for him. And I saw some stuff that I haven't seen, some excitement, some desire, some fight. And we'll get to the defensive liabilities because there's big.
Yeah, let's talk about that now because Costa Rica had two chances and they basically scored on both those chances. Or three, the one that hit the post.
No, there was a third one that should have been a goal that was off the post. That should have been the winning goal. Yeah. But basically, they had two significant attacks in the game and both created intense problems. Right, one of them, a terrible mistake from Max Arfsten to give up a penalty when there's no need. The second one, a failure to clear the ball. In fact, an incredible run that leads to then a deflected shot and then the goal. I mean, but what's so concerning if you're a U.S. fan and if you're a U.S. player is how easily Costa Rica, with the little possession they had, with the little opportunities they had, were able to create very dangerous chances. That's problematic, especially when you think about the wide defenders. Really some issues there defensively all over the place for the U.S., But give Costa Rica credit, as you said, without Ugalde, without some of their big players to be as dangerous as they were. Impressive Costa Rican performance. Miguel Herrera somehow shows up in big moments.
Yeah, and they came back after the U.S. The beautiful goal by Arston, right? That was a beautiful play by Ajiman, sending it off to Tillman, relaying it beautifully to Arston, who made up for. He had a very good match, aside from the one idiotic mistake he made that cost the penalty. But
he's also at fault for the goal, right? The second goal.
Fair. Okay.
So I mean, that's the thing. It's like a lot of good things, but a lot of big mistakes as well, and that's what you get from young players. That's what you get from inexperienced players, and we knew that going in.
Yeah.
But we got the thing we were searching for was the kind of, could they show up in big moments? And so many of them did. We talked about Freeman taking the penalty. Matt Freese.
Yes.
Matt Freese, man.
Matt Freese, the new U.S. hero. I think that penalty performance guaranteed his roster on the World 100%. Cup roster. Even if he's not the starting goalkeeper, he needs to be on that roster because you can always pull a Tim Krul for the Netherlands and bring him in for penalties.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean,
like
Costa Rica knows well about that, right? That was done against him in the World Cup. Holland, the Netherlands brought on Tim Krul for Sillissen, and he basically was a penalty specialist. That's what you're alluding to. And Matt Freese is a penalty specialist. I mean, effectively, he got his hands on nearly all those penalties. Yeah. He saved 3 of them, but he got his hands on multiple ones and was really impressive. Of course, Keylor Navas on the other side, an incredible goalie, but what a performance by Matt Freese.
Unbelievable performance by Matt Freese, and the U.S. moves on. We'll talk about that a little bit later in terms of
kind of lucky, but you take it, right?
Yeah, get through. All right, a team that did not get through today was Canada, and we're going to talk about both sides of this picture because Guatemala, for all the Guatemaltecos out there, man, what a performance! And we're going to talk about what historic performance out there.
Let's start there.
Yeah, start there.
It's an incredible story.
Yeah.
That stadium was incredibly alive with Guatemalan fans. In Minneapolis, I don't think there's a lot of Guatemalans in Minneapolis. That means they traveled there for the game. Incredible atmosphere, incredible moment. And to be honest, I was guilty of underestimating this team because coming in, they had lost that qualifier against Jamaica 3-0 on the road. You think this is not a team we should be worried about, right?
Yeah.
But wow. They beat Jamaica for the first time ever to open this tournament, right? And then they have the close game against Panama, a little bit tight, unfortunate perhaps to lose it. And then that crazy game where they go up 3-0 against Guadeloupe and they sort of allow Guadeloupe to come back. But it's been incredible. I mean, Olga Escobar, what a player, man. This guy showed up in a massive way, an incredible performance. For me, yes, they rode their luck a bit because of the red card. But when they needed to turn it up a man, wow, did they do it? It was such an incredible performance. And this coach, by the way, this manager, Tena, he is a manager. If you don't remember, he was the manager of Mexico, that team that won the Olympic gold medal. So he has experience doing big things. And he's got this team playing well, man.
And it's not easy. Even if you're up a man, you have to actually go out and score, right? And that was a beautiful goal that they created. What a fantastic goal.
Incredible goal. And that man, remember, American fans will know him when that's Rubio Rubin, who at one point played for the US, but he's now, of course, plays for Guatemala, but he's playing with so much confidence. And there's so many players I was so impressed with. Aaron Herrera as well, even though he gives up the penalty, for me, I thought he was solid.
Yeah, and stuck his penalty too when they needed him.
Yeah, that's and the crazy thing for Guatemala, you'd expect that their captain, Pinto, stepping up there to take that penalty, that he's going to bury it. I mean, and then he misses it, and they still are able to find a way to get it through the penalties. Really impressive from this team.
It's a team to watch out for in the semifinals. It's not going to be a cakewalk for the US, and so that's one thing to keep in mind. All right, let's talk about Canada now. A lot of Canadian viewers out there. We talked about before in the previous video, we said Canada needs that big victory in a major tournament. And now they're no longer a team that the expectation is going to be sort of mid-tier. Now you have high expectations. So this is pretty much akin to what the U.S. did in Copa America in my mind. And Shaffelburg basically played the role of Timothy Weah, getting a red card at an inopportune time.
Absolutely. We said this going in, that this is, and I still believe, roster-wise, it's an incredibly talented roster. Yes, they were missing Alphonso Davies, right? Yes, Bombito wasn't there. But this team, man, the way they were built and the way they're set up, and yes, Tajon Buchanan got hurt in this game, but they were an incredibly talented roster. And they should have gone in. They went into this tournament as favorites, to be honest, right? Mexico may be the other favorite, but you can't look at this U.S. roster and say they should be favorites. Canada has shown talent-wise that they can do this. Again, a failure in the biggest moments to get a big result. This could have been a tournament they would want it to win, right?
Yeah.
And to go out in the quarterfinals is an utter disappointment. And I have some real issues with the way this team is being coached, and we can get to that in a second. But let's start with the fact this is a huge disappointment.
Yeah. And I think Canadian fans would have to agree. I mean, I saw a little bit on social media that Canadian reaction was pretty harsh, right? Because
it should be.
There was a lot of very questionable decisions as well by Jesse Marsch, right?
100%. If you think about, take a look at the tournament totality first, right?
Yeah.
winning that opening game against Honduras easily, right?
Yes.
You think they're off to the races.
Yeah.
Some strange rotation in the second game.
Yeah.
And then, to be candid, they were lucky to come out of that game with the draw against Curacao, right? They were really, didn't look good at all. And then, yes, you get the fine result in the third game. El Salvador's team, we were against 9 men.
Yeah.
But this is a game you have to win. And I will say it, you can say what you want, that Shaffelburg makes an individual mistake. I do not disagree. It's a player who makes a silly mistake.
Yeah.
But to me, this is indicative, and I've talked about this before, about a manager and the way he's riling up these players and the narrative that he keeps bringing up about how this is an underdog team. They need to keep fighting and they need to keep sort of, he's made them into this coiled machine, this sort of, and you look at what Shaffelburg did, and I'm not saying that Jesse Marsch is to blame for an individual's actions, but this is a manager that, remember, served a 2-match ban for a red card, right? Yeah. And then there was an investigation to whether he was improperly interacting with the referees, etc. That kind of thing suggests to me a lack of discipline amongst the team. If your manager is getting a red card, right? Is it that shocking that a player loses his head and goes into a tackle when there's no need to do it on a yellow card? For me, again, this is a team that should behave as a favorite. They should be calm. They should play with that confidence. Instead, they're at times sort of taking on this spirit of craziness that doesn't help them. And for me, I think you have to ask real questions now about a manager that has failed in the Nations League and that has failed now in the Gold Cup. I don't think they should change it. There's only some time before the World Cup, but I think he needs to change. Jesse Marsch as a manager needs to understand this thing is not helping them. This anger, this underdog, this is not what they need.
Yeah.
They need to play with the sense of calm and control. And so I just don't see that's what they're doing right now.
And you saw it even in the biggest moment. It seems to me, okay, Jonathan David dispatches the penalty. Fantastic. Gets it done, right? In the penalty shootouts, Kyle Laren, one of the most experienced players on the team, when they need him to sit up, takes probably the worst penalty out of everyone, right? And there's a lot of pressure on the youngster who missed, right? He felt terrible. You saw it, right? After he hit the crossbar. But that's hitting the crossbar, and it's in a very tight situation. Earlier than that, a player like Kyle Laren has to step up for his team like that, man. You can't be putting penalties like that.
Yeah. I mean, and actually, I thought on the broadcast, they made an interesting point about when Shaffelburg came off for the second yellow, the entire team was sort of giving him high fives. Jesse Marsch giving him a high five. I didn't love that. That shouldn't be encouraged, right?
Yeah.
That's a silly decision. It's a decision that let the team down. He's a good player.
Yeah.
But there's absolutely no need to go into that tackle the way he did.
Yeah.
And I heard after the match that Marsch was upset about the first yellow. It doesn't matter. The point is, this is a team that is so much better talent-wise. This is a team that could have easily have beaten this U.S. team in the next game.
100%.
And now they wasted that opportunity because they threw away a game they could have won, because I honestly believe there's a problem in the spirit and the discipline of this team right now.
Yeah.
And until and unless the manager recognizes that and changes that, I think they have some real problems.
Yeah. No, we're going to talk more about Canada in a separate video. We'll do like a whole video on them once this tournament finishes up. But a similar point, we want to finish up here and just briefly touch on the matches that happened the day before. And look, we talked about Panama. They're kind of in that Canada zone, right? They were the ones to take, okay, are we ready to take the next step? Ready to challenge the U.S. and Mexico. But at the end of the day, Mexico got the result against Saudi Arabia. It wasn't always pretty, but when it mattered, Raul Jimenez and Alexis Vega stepped up. Santi Jimenez basically causes the last goal.
Yeah.
The top players perform. Panama, very similar situation to Canada. They had the game in hand and they threw it away.
Yeah, they did. The difference with Panama is, remember, I think Panama in the past 4 years, 5 years has played incredibly well, played above themselves in a lot of ways. And let's not forget they were missing their best player, right, in this tournament, Coco Carrasquilla. And I think as good as they were this tournament and as good as they were in this game for periods, sometimes this happens, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you give up a game. It nearly happened to the U.S., right, against Costa Rica. I don't think Panama was bad by any stretch. I think they were a bit unfortunate, but I think it doesn't take away from what Panama's accomplished over the recent past. It's a different scenario than Canada for me because Panama has overachieved and they have a very good manager. And I think they got a little unlucky, and give Honduras incredible credit, right?
Yeah.
For fighting and staying in this game and then coming through in penalties after starting the tournament with this.
That's what I'm going to say. Give them credit for the whole tournament after getting hammered 6-0. You could say, oh, I'm going to pack it in and forget about it. Yeah.
And so give them a lot of credit. Give credit in the same way that the Guatemala gets credit, in the same way that Costa Rica should get credit for nearly coming through in that game. I mean, some really impressive performances from CONCACAF teams. I think Panama, yes, it's a disappointment, but I think they'll be okay.
Yeah. And when they get some of the players back, we'll see. Okay. The story, like we said, was Guatemala and Honduras. So, Rahi, let's finish with this, right? Let's see okay, that game's in the books. Now, we got to real quickly talk about it. Who will make the final? Here's the matchups. You got the two underdogs, Guatemala, Honduras.
Yeah.
Can either of them nick US or Mexico?
Well, the thing we didn't talk about, or I didn't talk about, was Mexico. And I have to give, and we've talked before at times about Canada, interesting, right? Panama playing well, but it's hard to pick against Mexico. And there's a reason for that. Because in the big moments, you trust Mexico, right? Yeah. You trust that Raul Jimenez will show up, that Santi Jimenez will show up, that Alexis Vega. I mean, that these players, you just feel that they have the thing.
Edson
and
Alvarez,
big moments, they're just going to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's hard to pick against Mexico. I always struggle to do it. Again, as well as Honduras has played, I find it difficult to imagine that they'll be able to beat this Mexican team.
Yeah.
Mexico has done it kind of quietly, right? Almost under the radar of late. And they've been very, very good. So for me, I think Mexico's into the final. And on the other side, this has been an incredible story for Guatemala. And I think they have a great chance against the U.S. team that is not great, right? And they can survive and defend and then take their chances when they can. But they're going to have to get lucky, right? Because the goalie's going to have to play incredibly well. He did incredible things for them. Of course, he's the backup goalie, right?
Yeah.
But they're going to have to ride their luck. And the U.S. is going to have chances. And if the U.S. doesn't take their chances, and if the U.S. makes mistakes, which they will on the other side, then the Guatemala has a chance. But I think that we have to be honest and say the U.S. is the favorite to make the final, and that they most likely will make the final.
Yeah. All right, fans out there, let us know your thoughts of who will make the Gold Cup final and your thoughts about the matches that happened. Canada, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Panama, the U.S., and Costa Rica. Any of you fans out there, let us know what you thought. Right, final thoughts. We're going to finish up here and move on. It's been a fascinating Gold Cup, I got to say.
It's been fun. This round was incredibly fun. For a tournament that at times has been boring, that to be honest, has it lost its luster compared to the Nations League? But then you see a story like Guatemala, in that stadium full of Guatemalan fans in Minneapolis, and you just, wow, what a tournament. And you see Honduras. Honestly, I forgot how great this tournament can be, right? And congratulations to Guatemala. What a story.
Yeah. And it feels like a reinvigoration of the U.S. men's national team, too, with you see that fight back and forth. Mexico proves that, hey, Mexico's always Mexico.
Luck is all you need.
Yeah. So, all right, everyone out there, keep watching the beautiful game. If you're enjoying this channel, please subscribe. And we'll see you all right after the semis.